Hello and welcome to this video. I've interviewed many people on this channel over the years, jazz virtuosos, prog legends, but I've never had a bona fide pop star on the channel. Now, it happens that I am actually good friends with, actual friends, not Facebook friends or YouTube friends. We're talking actual friends with this gentleman here, this young man, which is Mark Dloot. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Andrew.
We've known each other for a long time.
Many years.
But Mark was in a pop band in the early 90s called EMF. And he had lots of adventures in that band. And he's recently brought a book out that contains those adventures. And what's the book called, Mark?
Big Dreams of Broken Hands.
Big Dreams of Broken Hands. Mark is a drummer like myself. I came across him when he was working over at Tama, and he looked after me. So he's got he's got a lot of knowledge,
but not a lot.
A lot of knowledge on drumming. But he's going to be really talking about fame. I think we got to deal with fame today.
Let's talk about fame.
Should we talk about fame?
Let's talk about fame.
Favourite? I always got compared to Bruno when I was younger. I think Leroy was my favourite, like everyone else. Anyway, so tell us the story of how you went from being a lout from Cinderford to being one of the biggest pop bands in the world.
And
then the fall.
And then the fall. And then off the cliff you go. No, fame is a weird one, isn't it? Let's talk about fame seriously for 2 seconds. Fame is going to bed one night and then getting shot through a big glitter cannon and landing in this world that you think is the world that you went to bed in, but everything's changed.
Yeah.
You look at me differently, I look at you differently, you look at me differently, everyone's looking at each other differently. And everything changes. And then...
You know what the name of that cannon is, don't you?
Go on.
Gary.
Gary's cannon.
Gary, the Gary glitter cannon.
Ironically,
yeah.
You bring up Gary though, it's interesting, right? I was 6 or 7 years old watching Top of the Pops.
Yeah.
Slade, Mud, Gary Glitter. They're all on there.
Yeah.
Pan's People.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, look at that for a job. You know, there's a drummer in the back going, giving it all this, all these sexy girls all around him and all that. And I'm thinking, I like the look of that. I'm looking at my uncle who worked at a Xerox factory, and he had this complexion about him, you know, death. Just death about him, you know. And I thought, I want a bit of that. That was the first time I actually got a little flame to want to be what we call a pop star. And during my time with EMF, I got shot out of that cannon, and I landed in the fairyland called pop stardom, and I danced the merry tune of fame and glory for many years, chauffeur-driven lunatics, you know, and all that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden it just comes to a stop. It's like, there's the bus, the door's open, off you go, ta-da. And then you've got to deal with the decompression of it, you know, and
is this what the books really covers?
No one talks about that.
They do all the time. That's what anyone goes on about.
No one talks about the
you old pop
decompression.
stars. Always there moaning about it.
Oh, me Robbie Williams. Oh, God forbid.
Come on, Mark. In the end, if you hadn't done that and got the job in the Xerox factory...
I wouldn't have ended up at Tama, and I wouldn't have met you.
That's true. You've turned it around then.
And we wouldn't have got together.
Yeah, it's true. This is going to be a difficult interview because I do know Mark very well. We've had lots of adventures together. We're almost hugging here, aren't we, mate?
Yeah, I
haven't seen him for a while. I haven't seen Mark for a while. So we were all being lovey and YouTube lovies, which is always good.
It's good.
Tell us, how did EMF get so big? Was it a long slog up the hill of stardom, or was it literally overnight success? How would you describe it?
It's going to sound awful.
Because I don't imagine you guys had much of a plan.
This
really,
is the interesting
You weren't like Jesus
thing.
Jones, were
No.
you? There was no degrees and bloody music business knowledge there, was there?
No,
really?
no, there wasn't. There wasn't. You have made a fine point there,
Yes,
Andrew.
I'm
No,
here to
you
do
really
it.
have.
Yeah, I have.
And I can't go into too much detail because it's in the book.
Buy the book, links down below.
And then write something in the comments and let me know what you think.
I tell you something. The reason why I wanted Mark on because years ago we were doing a clinic tour around the UK and he was driving me around. It was like planes, trains and automobiles. I'm Dom DeLuise, he's bloody Steve Martin, right?
Oh.
And I was reading The Dirt by Motley Crue. And he was telling me stories of his time in EMF. And it was making Motley Crue look like bloody ABBA, I have to say. So, you know, it was like, they did get up to quite a lot. Well, naughty boys. And so, I know you can't say all the bad things on there, obviously, because it's all allegedly, isn't it? It's all alleged.
Everything's allegedly.
It's all allegedly.
It's on the sledgely of the allegedly, right? And it is. Now, my book's clean, even though it does have a little sticker on the front which does say parental advisory.
I did see that.
And that is mainly because I used a word that it's more of a 70s, 80s word, which I don't know if I could say on here because it's YouTube, the word minge. And that comes up now and again because there was lots of it around.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about playing, you know, there was other things going on.
So what are you moaning about?
Oh, I couldn't stop moaning about it. The quality was terrible. The quality was awful. But no, it was, no.
You guys were proper, let's back up. So how, because obviously, how many, this is a thing that people don't realise, how many hit records did you have in EMF?
This is the interesting one, isn't it? Because like most people say, oh, they were only good for Unbelievable, right? But we had 9 top 40 hits in England.
9 top 40 hits?
9 top 40 hits.
Doesn't matter, does it?
No.
You did that record
I was
with
on
Vic
top of the
and Bob,
pop.
didn't you?
I was on top of the pops more than DLT.
Yeah.
DLT.
That's Dave Lee Travis, it's not a sandwich.
Yeah,
Bob.
no, I'll get me coats on. No, so yeah, we did. But to answer the previous question, EMF did arrive very quickly, you know. If you can imagine a bullet train on fire, people hanging out the window, comes into the station and everyone gets off. That's pretty much how EMF arrived in the music biz, right? I had done my, what do we call it, Anne? Cut my teeth, playing in other bands, doing gigs all over the place and, you know, dreaming of this, that and the other, you know, doing showcases in front of record companies on a Tuesday afternoon somewhere, trying to make it look great, you know, and nothing happening, right? And the moment I stopped taking things seriously and got in with a bunch of guys who just wanted to have a laugh, it all went bang, very quickly.
And is that how Unbelievable was written?
Yep. It was a cold, damp evening up in Gloucester, about 2 streets down from Fred West's house. He was up there doing another patio while we were down the road writing Unbelievable. It wasn't. We literally were around 2 streets from his house, you know.
The thing is,
we couldn't hear the jackhammer in the basement.
Online, if you want to know Americans, right, you've got your Jeffrey Dahmers and all that.
Yeah, we've got Fred West.
We've got Fred West. He's way worse than anything you've got, right? But the thing is, if you go online and read the interviews with him, he sounds like Mark, and I can't take him seriously. Have you ever heard him?
I know Fred.
Oh, we got right out of
Oh, Fred's terrible.
So
you know,
just as Fred's doing all his...
He's up the street, isn't he, doing his new patio and basement.
Yeah.
And we're around the corner plugging in a Moog. We've got a little piano in the room and the classic Tascam. 4-track, that is, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Right, 4-track, yeah. And we're banging it together. We're getting some tunes together, and then it happens really quick. The songs come together, and we're thinking this is quite fun, you know. And then one day we were in rehearsal. One of the band members came in and said, "Booked you a gig, boys. I booked us a gig, like 8 weeks away, and we've got 4 songs." We're like, right, we gotta do more songs. We got a party to do at Christmas.
So it's Unbelievable, the first song you wrote?
One of the first, yeah.
Bloody
the first songs were Unbelievable, Children, I Believe, and Lies. They were the first batch. Just bang, 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 bang. And I remember being in that little bedroom hearing these tunes coming out thinking, well, these are all right. Didn't think nothing more of them though, right? So there was no conscious decision we're going to take over the world. Yeah. There was no conscious decision that we're going to dress like we're going to dress. There was no conscious decision on the actual finished direction and theme of the band. It all happened naturally. And I think these are the important ingredients, right? And I talk about this in my live shows. If you get a chance to check me out. Anyway, it's all about, you know, the combination of things, isn't it? Motivation, passion, dedication, commitment, and a sprinkle of luck, right? And people say, no, it's more to do with luck. Well, it kind of is, but all these other ingredients make you go out the door. Like, I will go and meet up with those friends that night. I will go and see that band. I will do this. Because all those moments that you're out there doing stuff, you're not necessarily looking for the key for the door to open up to your dream coming true, but you might just find it that night. Or at least you might find the bloke who knows the guy who's got the lock to, the thing to pick the lock. And this was the situation with EMF, right? So if you're going to sit at home going, yeah, well, nothing ever happens to me. Well, it's not, is it? You've got to get out and you've got to get on with it. You know?
I watched Yes Man yesterday with...
Love it.
With Jim Carrey.
Brilliant film.
And it made me laugh. But my favourite bit in the film was when the bloke's trying to kill himself. Because he's had guitar lessons, he writes that song. And you know the way he appears on the balcony with his leg like that, and then starts singing this song, and then they all start singing.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I can remember I was doing my degree, and we've been out on Friday night. We get up, the chart show's on. You've gone massive over. No one's heard of you, but then suddenly you're everywhere.
Boom.
And that song came on. Everybody went nuts, even though it was like in the morning, Saturday morning. We're all hungover, and everyone's going, "What the hell's this?
Look at this."
Yeah, it's that. I know what it is. It was a flat second that got me.
It's that lick, isn't it?
It's minor second.
Why was that even in there? You know. And I got to give credit to where credit is due, you know?
Yeah.
Ian Dench. And,
He's the ugly one, isn't he?
Ian's a really, really pretty one of the five of us, and a master songwriter at that time.
And he was a bit older, wasn't he, as well?
Yeah,
so.
let's just put it into context, though, of that time, yeah? Yeah, I wouldn't say he's still hot ticket now, as in like he's the hottest writer in the world now. He's not. There's a time in our life when these things are hot.
Yeah.
Red.
That's what I was saying. What I saw was you'd got grunge, you got dance music, and you got boy bands. And your band seemed to be all of those together. And the thing is the fact that you were good, except for Ian, good-looking lads. Ian was in the corner, like the boss. So I can remember thinking it. I thought, he's the old, he knows.
Yeah.
He's the one. But the rest of them are all pretty boys. Look at them. But the thing is, this wasn't like, it's not like E17 where it's been thought out, is it?
No.
This is a proper band. You're into heavy stuff.
None of it was choreographed.
No, yeah.
Nothing was choreographed, right?
Yeah.
Nothing, there was no manual for EMF. There was no expectations. And that's what was so lovely from the very beginning. And one of the engineers who worked with us on the road, right? Who actually works with a band that rehearses down this way, Judas Priest. Right, now he's toured with some really big guys, Martin has, over the years. Big rock legends that he says they pretend to live the dream, right? But he says we didn't need to do that, right? Because the way we lived, it was just normal, right? So it was 24/7 chaos, like there had to be a crack. There was always somewhere where we could manipulate and take the piss. Not in a way that anyone would get hurt or anything like that, but just to push it all the time,
So you got the
unhinged.
You've got basically, this is the rave either. You've got a lot of normal working class people. They're moving over into this sort of music world that they hadn't really been a part of. Oasis are really going to nail that a few
years later. They were,
you've got a whole bunch of bands emerging out of the UK, and then Atomic Dustbin, Wonder stuff, all that type of stuff. You seem to be much closer to hip hop and dance music and rave, but you also was heavier as well. It was a dangerous band, I thought.
It was a dangerous band. Do you know what? And I think there was an essence of it lost in the recordings, especially with Schubert Dip, the first album. I think when we first initially went in to record it, there was a conversation about who should we get that would be best to do it, right? Whereas the front of house engineers used to refer to us as a punk band with a backing track, right? Because there was that much energy, it was just in your face, everything was on 11 and off we go, But in the studio, there we ended up at first with this guy called Pascal Gabriel. I think he'd done Bomb the Bass or something. He hadn't worked with a live band, And he had me in the studio there, and I was sampling my drums, and I was playing beats without any cymbals, rugs over stuff and things, and everything was disconnected and not authentic, And anyway, we ended up on a big acid trap. We smashed the studio up and got rid of him. So that was the end of that session, right? And then EMI, funny enough, EMI.
Yeah.
EMI Parlophone, we were on no less.
Yes.
they decided that Unbelievable wasn't a strong enough single to start with.
That's what they're like, aren't they, record
Yeah, they're
companies?
fucking fantastic, aren't they? Sorry. Aren't they fantastic, though? Yeah, so they had this song in mind called Girl of an Age, which would be like, the equivalent of some watered-down, awful One Direction track, And we were like, nah. Unbelievable's going to do it, mate. Unbelievable's great. So we said, look, we'll go off and do it. So we went to this really crappy little studio in Brixton. It cost us about £3,000 for 3 days there to record the tune, and I've got a couple of versions which you can play some of your watchers and listeners, where you've got the original demo and then you've got the full version, and you can hear the difference.
I ain't playing that one.
I don't make any money out of it, no one.
No.
I'm so.
Even if he did, I wouldn't play it. I'll tell you that now. They have the whole bloody video. I tell you, they don't just have the little bit they played. Right, and I tell you, and if you didn't hear that track, it's because they grabbed that as well.
Yeah.
The AI grabbed the bloody demo, and it won't be there. So if you're wondering why there was just Mark doing that.
Go and look it up.
Yeah.
Go and look it up. Anyway, so there is a marginal difference between what we started with and then how it ended up in the studio, to the credit of the producer we had on board, Ralph Jesard. I think he'd done some stuff with Sonic Youth or something, so he had a little bit more of a rock and roll punky kind of edge to him, And he really came to the forefront on the second album, Stigma, which is my favourite album personally. That's the one where I think all of us really had, kind of sat in the rock and roll thrones for a little while and felt comfy all of a sudden, And we're like, yeah, we like what we're doing, and this is the album we're going to do while we're doing it, Whereas Schubert Dip was written, they say you've got a lifetime to write your first album. Well, Schubert Dip was written in six weeks. The whole album was written in 6 weeks because we had a gig in a pub in Cinderford.
One of the things you told me, which really, I think...
But all the details are in the book.
Yeah, read the book, you don't have to read the book, most of it's here.
I haven't listened to it.
Most of it's here, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, you told me this, and I didn't realise this, is there's a sample on there from somebody thing, and they're saying the F word.
Yeah.
Which is fuck, by the way. Yeah. Not the actual, because the F word's changed now.
Yeah.
There's another one, which is the same name as a meal that me and Mark would have had in the early 1980s with mushy peas, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
It would have been F word and peas.
Yeah.
I ain't saying it.
No.
I tell you now, they'll have it.
Don't.
So, but the old F word, there's a sample of it in the single, isn't there?
There is, yeah.
And how many times does it say the F word?
Endlessly.
Endlessly. I don't think there's a hit single that's got the F word. Maybe some modern one now with, modern rap types have done something like that. But.
It was clever how we did it, though. We had an Akai. I don't know if anybody watching, we had this S1000, which was a mind in its own. I mean, so much memory capacity. I mean, at least 10 kilobytes in that whole machine that weighed the equivalent of a Mini Cooper, right? And we would trim.
You need a PhD to bloody work it.
You did need a PhD, yeah. Or we had Derry, who was our sampler, who was just, slightly ecstatic and crazy in his own way.
Holding that knob down to get
but he knew how to get
time. Yeah. He'll be there.
He knew how to get in and out of that thing, man. And he said, so we'll just take the C and K off, Yeah. But the funnier sample...
Oh, so does it go, what the fuck?
So it goes,
what the fuck?
But the funnier sample is the, whoa, which is Andrew Dice Clay. Now, Andrew Dice Clay, we actually tried to, he's a really well-known, very big American comedian. It wouldn't go down too well right now.
No,
I don't think especially the one about the lady that lived in a shoe and all that, and her uterus fell out. That's not, whoa, yeah, no, Andrew, no, he is. So, we approached Andrew Dice Clay's management for the clearance of that song. We didn't get any word back, and then we happened to bump into the producer who worked with the Chili's with the long hair, really
Rick Rubin.
Rick Rubin. He was one who worked with Andrew Dice Clay. We bumped into him and asked him about it, and he went, "Yeah, just send a thing over to the office on Monday, and we'll clear it for you." We didn't even have to pay.
Really?
Didn't even have to pay, right? And there's 2 samples of Andrew Dice Clay on that record, and I've heard an interview with him in recent time where he's kicked himself a couple of times about it, because he says in the interview Oh, some little
Well,
punk English band asked for something, and we just gave it to them. Next thing you know, they're everywhere, you know.
Well, the thing is that, so you've got this single out. We could go on about Unbelievable because it's almost like a classic pop single. It's so perfect in its hook construction. I've spoken about it on the channel so many times. So what was it like? I mean, it wasn't just a number one in the UK. It went number one.
Number 3 here.
Number 3, is that all it was? But it goes across the whole world. You're talking.
Robson and Jerome beat us.
What with that bloody
Whatever it was.
Unchained Melody? Simon Cowell.
Yeah, one of them tunes. I mean, that's a tragedy, isn't it? Right? So the record companies say, "Oh, don't release anything in October. You'll get caught up in the Christmas rush. You know, don't release it in midsummer because then you've got the big movies coming out, like you know, Kevin Costner's whatever it was, you know, that took over the charts. Bryan Adams, wasn't it?
Brian
40
Adams,
weeks or something daft, wasn't it? People committed suicide to that.
Hey?
People jumped off bridges to that tune. 40 weeks it
That's
was
the
in the
second
chart.
suicide reference. You're not supposed to do that on YouTube. I've done it now. You've done it.
Oh, well.
Keep off suicide. You got the
it's no
uteruses
good for you
dropping
at
out
all.
of people. We got the F word, both of them.
It's crap, isn't it?
I knew if he came on, it would be X-rated.
Anyway,
hell.
so they pipped us to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up for years thinking it was Shut Up Your Face, whoever that was.
Joe Dolce.
Yeah, that's
Joe
him, Dolce, wasn't it? Yeah, but no, it was.
You just wanted it to be him.
I wanted it to be him, but no, it was Robson and Jerome.
So when it blew up, it was like across the whole world, wasn't it? So what were you doing? Were you at home or what?
I was at home, right, and I remember being at home and I learnt the thing called the midweek report, right? And as a young musician, you don't know anything about this. You know, you're signed and your stuff's being released. And, you know, hearing your own music for the first time somewhere is really weird, you know. Yeah, when you've played it at home in front of your mum and dad, you know, you've got your demo on and you've gone, oh, this, you know, and you can't help but play with the mid and treble and all that. It's not quite right. And, you know, constantly adjusting it because your head's gone. But when you actually hear your own mix, maybe on radio, or like I remember being in somewhere like House of Fraser, or equally good large department stores, and hearing it in the speakers in the background, I'm like, holy shit, that's my fucking record, that's my record now, you know, what am I going to do?
Did you want to tell everybody?
Yeah, I'm like, whoa, this is me, you know.
I'd hate that.
It's funny feeling.
I would hate that. If I was in this shop and my record came on in this shop, I would be going, yes, this is me, by the way, at the counter.
I want a day off. At that point, I was like, I really want time off, you know. But we learned this thing about midweek. So I'm at home, and I get a call from management saying, "You're never going to believe this, but midweek you're number 2 in England." This was like, "You're number 2," and I'm like, "Oh, you know, my nan's cooking some new cakes. Everything's really kicking off in my house."
F words and peas.
Oh, F words and peas. Everything's getting on, you know. My bro's got Jimmy's. No, he ain't got Jimmy on. It was Russ Abbott actually, who had a really good album at the time. That's on in the background, right?
Well, the atmosphere one.
Yeah.
So this is what you're up against now. You only made number 3. You got
know what I mean?
Shut Up Your Face, Robinson and Jerome, Russ Abbott.
I mean, where are you going to
fight?
in?
You've got to fight. You went back in '91.
It's not like in the 70s, was it? Yeah. You're fighting your charts with the likes of Cream.
Yeah, well,
bloody
David
Zeppelin.
Bowie. Yeah. You've got to get Russ Abbott out of the way.
You're rowing through all this garbage, trying to get up the chart.
It wasn't garbage.
You know.
Where's my Dennis Waterman album?
Oh no! He's got the Dennis Waterman album.
Of course I bloody have.
Not right time, right place.
No, I've got a rare one. Just simply called Waterman. Look at that.
Look at that.
Look at it.
Look.
Look what he's got in his top pocket as well.
Oh, look.
Back in the embassy.
That's his embassies in there, isn't it? The man was a legend, wasn't he?
Look at his
But
stick.
he wrote the scene tune and he sang it, didn't he?
He did do that. I knew you'd appreciate that.
Anyway, so yeah, midweek it was this. Everyone was excited, and then by the time we got to Sunday, it dropped down a peg, and we were like number 3. So when you think about England, you think, wow, you know, this is nuts, you know. Top of the Pops want you on.
Yeah.
So I had my first appearance on Top of the Pops. You know, I'd grown up watching that show.
And he was hosting that. Not Savile.
I think DLT was there.
Was it DLT?
Yeah, I got mildly fingered when I was in the crowd by some big ginger lass. You know.
That was me.
But the thing is, what they don't tell you.
Do you feel comfortable with I thought I'd take you back.
What they don't tell you, right, is that you've got like 5 rehearsals for the cameras, right?
Yeah.
And then they bring the crowd in, right? And there's only about 80 of them, and they're all being ushered around, like herded round,
to make it look bigger.
Yeah, to make the place feel cramped, you know.
Yeah.
And like in between, you're waiting on the side, and then all the girls being pushed. Next thing you know, you've got loads of gagging young, and they just grabbing at you in between like that. But anyway, so I get behind the kit. And as a musician, this bit is like traumatizing.
Yeah,
you know?
mind me.
There's carpet on the toms.
Yeah.
You know, there's no bass drum pedal. And the cymbals are made of something from another world, you know, 4 inches thick. So when you hit them, nothing's. So when you hit a crash cymbal, it doesn't move. So you've got to hit it like that, you know. So instantly I took a dislike to this. The playback was so quiet that the noise I'm making on the plastic is louder. And then I got into the thing of when the camera came around, like with Rob now behind, you can't see him. We got Rob behind the camera here, who's dressed in gorgeous. He's head to toe in Chanel and high heels. He's open-toed. It just looks amazing. And the cameraman would pan round and then a little red light would come on and I go, oh, I'm on now.
Yeah.
So I'd skip into a different beat. Deliberately. Whatever, or do a fill that wasn't there. Just show people at home, he ain't playing live, is he? Look. Because I used to watch Dr. Pops and think, is he playing live? He's not playing live, is he? You know. Yeah. So we had a laugh with that straight from the off. But the big rocket was when we landed in America, you know, and we toured America and we did this.
And who were you touring with?
Well, we first went out for a little 2-weeker and we just played all the little punk rock gigs, like the really famous little venues, right?
Yeah.
And we ended in Whiskey A Go Go in California. That was our last gig before we flew back home. And at this point, Columbia Records, part of EMI, were working it on the college circuit, and it was climbing through the charts for about 20 odd weeks, like just really steadily climbing, because they were doing all the footwork, you know. So there was nothing illegal going on. It was footwork, college radio first, punk rock gigs, really small venues, crammed to the hilt. No barriers at the front, people falling on the stage, all this kind of thing. You know, and celebrities queuing up to come. I never forget coming off the stage in Sunset, whatever it was called, Whiskey Go Go. Ran off the stage, went to go upstairs, and the bass player was running up the stairs in front of me, and I went, Zach, Hookie was just by the door from New Order. I said, did you see Hookie? He went, yeah, I think it was, wasn't it? 5 minutes later, we're in the dressing room, getting on. Hookie walks in. And he then takes all our cocaine off us, and he snorts it all. They call him Hookie the Hoover. And he had an Electrolux Hoover hanging off a chain in his, he's took the lot. Yeah, that's that story anyway. So, but it was carnage.
Like, but it was all sex, drugs, and.
I mean, then you fast forward like a year or two, right? When Unbelievable was like, I can remember we were touring we went over for a 2-month tour. We were playing the second of 2 Canadian shows. I think we were in Vancouver, possibly. I think we'd done Montreal first, then Vancouver. And we were in the dressing room prior to the show, and this lovely, naive little EMI rep came into the dressing room, and we're all psyched up. We've got about half an hour to go, and we're starting to get pumped, you know. And she comes in and she goes, you've just gone to number 1. And the room just lit. We just literally set fire to the room. You know, the dressing room was destroyed. We were running around like headless chickens, you know, just didn't know what to do with this energy of getting to where we got to, you know. And by the time we got out on stage, that energy transferred to the audience, and then the audience surged. And there was about 2,500 in this auditorium on a thing coming down towards us. And they surged towards the crowd, and they crushed the barrier and broke the barrier. So the gig had to be stopped until they could reinforce this barrier and then start again. And that night, I mean, it just went off on one. We got on a bus that night, and we were driving from Vancouver down to Boston. And I remember getting on that bus, and somebody said to us, there was a couple of English fellas backstage earlier, and they got this stuff with them called ecstasy. And we'd not heard of any of this. We didn't know what it was. You know, we'd been involved with the dance scene, but we didn't know what ecstasy was. Of course, us being us, 20 odd years old, you know, full of the beans and all that, we're like, oh yeah, we'll have some of this. Anyway, for 2 hours, we were running up and down the bus in our underwear, singing "Pleased to Meet You, Don't You Know My Name," you know, by the Stones. Woo woo! And then we had to get off and get out down into Boston, and then that tour then went from like 1,000 to 1,500 capacity, and overnight it had to be switched to like 4,500 to 6,000. So like everyone, the tour manager, the stage managers, they all had to basically increase everything. The PA, the production, the lighting, everything had to go up like 20 gears.
Yeah.
And they had to do that while on the road, you know. And then suddenly the tour just went off and we just rolled through
There's
America.
very few people have this experience, do they? So this is like proper, just like you say, it's like a glitter cannon. You've just been shot to the top.
Yeah.
And everyone's like laying the track as they go.
And then suddenly they're flying in security. Like we have to have our own personal security guard.
And this wasn't like a rock band as such. This is like a pop band, isn't it? So
Yeah.
your faces are on everything. It's like you're becoming the stars, aren't you? It's not like you're just playing in
bit One Direction-y kind of, or if you want to go back, maybe the Bros times and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Take that. It had that tinge to it with Schubert Dip, our first album, which we were fighting against because we knew we weren't that. But the record company were happy for us to go on the girly magazines. But we were also getting the indie magazines at the same time. We were the first band to cross over the two.
Yeah, this is it. So,
you know, we had Smash Hits and the Enemy front covers in the same week. No one had done that.
Well, I was an adult, you know, doing my degree, and we all thought it was a cool track.
Yeah.
We all thought this was cool.
And I think it
had a
caused-
rave thing going on about it as well.
Exactly, because there was that thing of the rave thing, and a lot of the bands like you mentioned earlier, like Ned's and Jesus Jones, and who else did we have right now?
Hot Will Eat Itself.
Hot Will Eat Itself,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
You know, Carter USM.
Yeah.
They all had their flavour going on, but we had something slightly different, you know. And then what we did have is we had the whole combination of it as well, where as a group of guys, we really meshed together when we were younger, you know, personality-wise, we meshed like a band of brothers. There was a real close connection. And I think it helped with four of the lads being fairly good looking, you know, and then one guy was not so, you know, car crash.
I'm only joking about
Yeah,
it.
he's
Ian's not that bad.
He's a beautiful, he was hung like a horse. But anyway,
Oh, well, that makes up for it. And so, as well as all the drugs, you're doing all the drugs. This has to be said, haven't you? It's all that's going off. You've got all the ecstasy and because was nobody quite knew what EMF stood for, was it? And there was ecstasy was in the E, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, that was the thing. That was the really funny thing in play on words at the beginning.
Why was it called EMF?
Well, it started off being called Epsom Mad Funkers, right?
Yeah.
Epsom as in Epsom salts. Mad Funkers was a gang of guys. They were a gang of guys that used to follow New Order. And they'd be up to no good wherever New Order were, right?
Yeah.
And then the following day, they'd be on Epsom salts to calm their stomachs down from what they'd been up to.
Yeah, yeah.
And Derry, our keyboard player, came up with this name. And I just remember in the early days, you know, back in the days before printers and computers, A4, Sharpie, you know, doing posters, paste of glue at night around the lampposts, you know, for a gig.
Yeah.
And I said to Derry one night, I'm going to cut the name down from Epsom Mad Funkers down to EMF. There was no band meeting, no conference over it. You know, we didn't have a WhatsApp group or anything.
No.
It was just done. You know, and we didn't know about other bands like that at the time. KLF weren't around.
No.
You know, that wasn't.
But it was because Pop Will Eat Itself became PWEI, obviously.
Yeah.
But you got REM, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, you've got REM and stuff.
But a lot of these meant
in
something.
excess.
Yeah. Anyway, but what about being? What happens when you get promoted as a sort of a heartthrob for the young girls? What happens then? What sort of attention does that bring? He really wanted to know.
Yeah, I know, but it is a strange one, isn't it? Because like you and I both drummers.
We never have stuff like this on the channel normally.
No, we don't. No,
I'll put a note on the end to explain to the progressive rock fans what girls are. You know, they're the other types that sort you might see when you go outside occasionally.
Sometimes they do in the merch. You know, they
Yeah,
sometimes do the merch.
Yeah.
And they might pick the glasses up at the gigs and stuff. They're lovely, lovely, lovely human beings. Well, you know, as a drummer, drummers have got this rep. You know, big gnarly drum kit, V8 engine car at the back. You know. It's all a bit cozy pal, innit? And we all want to live that dream, you know?
Cozy was my hero. That's who I wanted to be.
Where are they
Mullet,
gone?
wristbands,
Where are those
huge silver
drummers? Where have they gone? We don't have any more of them, do we?
Cozy pal.
And do you know what I find interesting? Just to cut off on the subject slightly here, I was hosting a young drummers thing recently where I had 24 drummers from the age of 7 up to about 21, but there was only one older one. So 7 to 14, say. All of them were stating similar people every time as their influence. Phil Collins, Vinnie Cleto, Dave Weckl. Names like that.
All the fusiony guys that I like.
But John Bonham kept coming up, right? But it's like their parents hadn't passed this on.
No, it's because they got the internet.
But it filled me with such warmth.
What, you were happy, were you?
Oh yeah, and the hope that they would somehow these big guys were still getting known.
Well,
you know,
sort of.
you know. I know we said Cozy Powell earlier. I mean, my biggest influence for me was Phil Collins, right? Only because my mum was into Trick or the Tail and all that kind of thing, and which was the Gabriel stuff, wasn't it?
Well, Trick of the Tail isn't, to be accurate. It's the first of the Collins singing.
That's the first of the Collins one,
Yeah,
is
but
it?
it's prog, though. It's full-on prog.
Maybe it's the one before that I'd heard where Peter was on it.
Lab Lies Down on Broadway.
I think I was about 11, maybe 10 or 11 when that came out. Anyway, that was the first stuff I heard. And then I steadily moved into the Police, right? And what I loved about Stuart was, unlike all other pop drummers I could hear of that time, there was lots of ska and two-tone around that were really influencing me. They were kind of regimented, sounding like they were on click tracks in the studio and stuff, you know? Whereas Stuart didn't fucking sound like he even owned a click track, right?
Yeah.
Stuart had that ability to play on the beat, but just ahead of it. So he sounds like he's on a promise. He's got to go somewhere. He's off somewhere after the gig, isn't he?
Totally right, yeah.
Everything's just, all the fills seem to come up out fast and everything. But they're in time.
Yeah.
Oddly, they're in time as well.
He's got that jazz chops going on.
Yeah.
But he pushes it so aggressive, it's not like a normal jazz drummer.
No.
And that influences everybody.
But some people have, I've heard some musicians and drummers quoted him as being a bit loose with his timing. It's not loose. It's to give that essence of punk, which means to push it on a bit, you know. And I loved that.
But he's also got, I always think Copeland sounds like ADHD.
Yeah.
he loses interest and goes, oh, sod it, we'll have another beat. We'll have another beat here.
Yeah. And
I've been messing your bottle, he must do about 15 beats. Like, make your mind up which one's going to be on the track.
Yeah, no, that's so true.
Nobody else would do that.
That's so true. No, I hadn't thought about it.
He can't
like
remember
that.
it. He comes back to the verse. He can't remember what he's done.
Yeah, and I tell you what as well.
This is normally the conversation we have. We have to have a little bit, because normally we don't talk about
No,
Mark's
we
past.
don't, no.
We talk
and
about drummers like this.
This is good stuff. We'll get back to the book in a minute. But this is the thing that, you know, like, Stuart had that thing of where he didn't play by the rules, right? So where most drummers learn to let the melody breathe, to let the vocalist do his bit, you know, Stuart wouldn't. Stuart would go, I'll put Phil in there. And Sting's singing. You know, where most drummers will hold off on that, punctuate the end maybe, you know, or accentuate something. Stuart would just go all over it, you know. You could hear that. You could hear the tension between them.
What's interesting about this is that I think what people don't realise is that you're an EMF. It's a pop band. You have a huge hit record, but you are a drummer. And you see, Mark's a modest drummer. Once you had some gig and you asked me to dep for it, and you sent me
that funk band.
Yeah, but your playing was ridiculous because your skill's different to mine.
Total different.
Because you were like a commercial drummer, and everything was worked out. You knew what you were doing. You were nailing it. The kit sounds amazing. The groove's absolutely immaculate, and everything's in the right
place in it.
Yeah, but I'm not like, I'm more Copelandy.
You're Copeland. You're jazz. You're fusion. You're prog.
But the thing is, people don't realise that these bands had players that had bloody given their life to being a drummer. But this is the thing, you don't get that credit, do you?
No, you don't.
You don't get it,
and I got the joy. I had the joy of working up close with a lot of those guys from those eras. You know, like Mark Brickerzicki, for example. He wasn't a pop drummer at all. Mark's not a pop drummer.
No.
What he did in Big Country for that time was really interesting. There was no one like him, really. You know, when you look at those other bands around that time, he really stood out to me, and it was a massive influence. And I remember when I was working for Pearl, and I got to be in a room with Mark, and Mark, what you reckon to this kit? And he's like, yeah, it's really nice. And he sits there and he starts playing, and he starts going around the toms. And he says, I don't know if you know, but I like playing around the toms a bit. And I'm like, I lean in and I go, I know all your back catalogue, every fucking note of it. I mean, I was in awe.
But the thing is that this is something people don't realise. They see the way the band is or a group is marketed.
Yeah.
And some of these groups, they're marketed as being players, and they don't bloody play. They're not even playing on the records.
No,
it's
they
all
don't.
bloody computers. And then there's other bands, especially in the pop area, where these guys are bloody. They've given their life to it. They've got their thing that they're doing and making pop records. Because the whole thing with unbelievable, I always thought, is the fact that it bloody drops out from the word unbelievable.
I know, and that happened straight from the beginning. If you do get to listen to this,
So was that you? Was that you? Because
no, it was part of the song structure. That was pretty much part of the song structure from the beginning. You know.
But it's the part of the drum structure, isn't it? It's the fact that the drums
there's a
are
little
dropping
stop there.
and people,
Here we go.
Yeah.
Which was funny around the world because you get the whole audience, depending on where you're from, singing that word back. And I mean, in Japan, we had a job going back into the song after it because it was quite funny, you know, like hearing 6,000 Japanese people who was trying to say the word unbelievable. You know, love you all though, please.
But you're doing big gigs. You're having to nail.
All that pressure. At 21 years old.
I assume you got clicks going, have you?
Clicks, yeah.
Which
clicks
hardly
going.
anyone had back then. That's
No,
a new
no one
thing,
had
innit?
clicks. No one had in-ears.
Yeah.
So my ears are gone. You know, they're literally hello. You know. Yeah, it was a different world, wasn't it? And it
So
was,
give us a taste of some of the madness, just a little bit of the sort of being in the biggest band in the world at that moment. What's the madness around you? What's it like? Especially when you're a band full of nutters.
Just the change of it all, right? We come in on a first class flight, you know, arrive in New York and go and do an MTV New Year's Eve bash, right? At the Roseland Theatre in New York. Hosted by MC Hammer, right? So he's there, he's got the balloons on, he can do the little, whatever it is he does, you know.
Yeah.
The Chili Peppers are playing that night as well with us, and Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. Mark Wahlberg, right? He was a singer in a band. So, you know, we're ushered backstage, we get a sound check, and everything's all camera, glitter, showbiz, you know, like full on, really full on. We've got two British security guards with us 24/7. We've got 4 guys from America with us that have been, you know, bought in extra because there's mania going on, you know, where it ain't just about, oh, can I get your signature? It's can I pull your hair out kind of scenario, you know? So it's not pleasant, you know. And we've done our sound check. We haven't really met anyone yet. And then they come in and say, oh, there's an interview later on. And all the band are like, you know, still a bit wasted from the night before. No one wants to do an interview. No one's interested in doing an interview. And then they say, the person who's doing this interview is a lady called Cindy Crawford. And it was like, look her up, right? Cindy Crawford.
Prince did a song about Cindy Crawford called Cindy C. There's a whole tribute.
Cindy C.
If I can't get your tune in, I'll put that one in instead.
Put Cindy C in.
Oh, Cindy C.
Oh,
won't
90s.
you play with me? Even Prince was asking her to play with him.
90s supermodels were a different cut, you know.
So what was she like in the flesh?
I'll get
Cindy?
to that. There's a full.
This is a brilliant video.
There's
this
a full
one.
description of this in the book. You read it alone. Put the kids, you know. Anyway, so yeah, we were like, are we going to define? Are we going to choose who's going to get this interview? You know, are we going to just strip off and wrestle on the floor for it? And we drew straws in the end. It was the only way it was done. The security had to do it as well because things got out of hand in the dressing room. Anyway, I happened to win, and our guitarist, Mr. Dent.
Oh, you didn't want him there.
No, I
you
didn't
do
want him.
actually, if you think about it.
No, I didn't really. I got to be honest.
Why?
No, I'd have been better with one of me with wingmen in there. Really. So anyway, the day had been amplified because it was our bass player's birthday, right? And because MTV had heard about what our bass player was like with some of his tricks and all the rest of it, they had a big cake made for him in a shape of a massive willy. Just like his, you know, all that kind
Who's
of
this?
stuff.
Your bass player?
He
had even bigger willy than he had. I've heard about his willy.
Incredible. It moved.
And of course, we have to say, we were moving towards this, that your bass player sadly passed away.
He did pass away, yeah. Nothing to do with his big willy, though.
No.
Which did move in separate continents as he went around the world, you know?
Are you going to tell him about the pickled onions?
No, I'll tell you that in a minute. So, anyway,
There's too many stories.
There's too many stories. So, the next thing is, we got to go up for this interview. So I'm there, I'm getting through my bag. I got myself some wet gel and a bit of jazz on.
Because Cindy loves that, doesn't she?
I thought, well, she's got to have a bit of jazz. Cindy might have a bit of Forest in her later. You never know, you know. Anyway, so Ian's in the corner, you know, going through some dusty old bag looking for something to put on, you know. He's shaking it off with all the mothballs and that and putting it on. He's got this smell like an old dusty mail bag, you know. Anyway, so we go up onto the balcony and we're stood on this balcony. There's about 4,000 fans, MTV vans downstairs, all hollering and shouting about whatever. And we're on this thing and we've got crew there. It's all set up nice. And then in she walks and she comes in, similar to how Rob had the camera set up at the beginning, you know, in slow-mo. Yeah. And it's just, she's just in slow-mo. She's 6'4" in heels, you know, and she's wearing some beautiful dress that's like, it's transparent. It's got black bits over bits and pieces. So you can't, there's no nasty tattoos underneath.
No.
She ain't got a massive big airy thing or anything. She looks a fine lady, mind. She got the physique of a swimmer, not somebody who's been swimming for years, so she's like really thin, but muscular, you know, strong lady.
Like a stallion.
Like a stallion.
Like a sexy female stallion.
Just everything about her was like Raquel Welch.
Yeah.
Sophie Loren.
She was a bit like Raquel Welch, wasn't she, old Cindy?
Anyway, she came over, producer said for her. Anyway, then she sidled in next to the mailman. And I'm thinking, oh, mailman's there and then Cindy's there. And I'm like, I've got a fucking short straw here, haven't I? Yeah. Anyway, we're doing this, whatever, and then the producer says, no, I don't like the composition. Nah, so she scuttles round and she comes in and she kind of sidles in, you know, when they sidle in.
Yeah.
And
they show me.
You know, they have to sidle in.
Watch Dennis, don't sit on him.
They got to sidle in next to you like that.
Yeah.
And I did think at the time, should I just whip my old fella out just to see if she could sit on it? But no, I didn't, thankfully. I kept those thoughts locked away in my mind, you know. So anyway, she sidles in, and the first thing I noticed was the smell. It wasn't like something I was used to. Not the girls in the rugby club, you know. They had that smell of like, you know, Pernod cider, cigarettes, you know. This was really nice. I mean, she's beautiful. Her skin touched me, and it was just like fresh bar of dairy chocolate, you know. I'm like, oh, supermodel minge. Jesus Christ, you know. Anyway, so we're doing the interview. I've been introduced, and she turns around to me and she says, and you are? And I went to say my name, and I don't know if you remember that time when you were between, I think, 12 and 14 when your balls drop, and your voice goes into 3 octaves. That's what mine did. I lost the will to speak properly in front of her, and that was the end of it. There was no Cindy Minge for me that night.
I'm Mark!
Yeah, I'm Mark!
I'm Mark!
So, as the interview progressed, we always had this thing, when we did big high-profile interviews, we would put a name in the bag, a word in the bag, and one of us has got to be able to say one of these words. And it would always be a word that no one else would really know what was going on. And I've used it a couple of times already. And at the time in America, no one had heard about the word minge.
No. Do they know it now?
They knew it after we left, I think, you know, but they didn't know it at the time. And she turned to me and she asked me what I thought of our performance that evening. And I said to her, well, back in our country, you know, where we're from, we would have called that a right minge of a show. And a
phrase nobody actually would use in the United Kingdom.
So it went over her beautiful head, and it went over everyone else's head. But I think I heard in the distance, because it was live streamed into the dressing room, I think I heard all the band and the crew and them, way! Because the word had got in there. But this was the style of the band. You know, it's like our last tour in America, I can remember being sat in a bus in one of these beautiful glass dome front buses on the double-decker, coming down over the hill, down into Los Angeles, right? And the first thing I saw was one of those humongous Hollywood billboards with our 5 mugs on it. Yeah. And then the name of our tour that year, Crossing Biffin's Bridge. You know where Biffin's Bridge is?
No.
It's that little bit of skin between her ass and her fanny.
This is going to have to be censored, this one is. How am I supposed to get this through? You're going to have to put in some of the words. You can all do bleeps or something.
So, yeah, Biffin's Bridge. And I remember doing a gig that night in LA, and I had a lady from the LA Times interviewing me after the gig, going, "So can you tell me, is the Biffins Bridge? Is this somewhere near the Royal Forest of Dean?"
When you said you know what it is, I thought, is that something in the Royal Forest of Dean?
Yeah.
Because it is a sort of place you would have in the Forest of Dean.
It sounds like a mystical place in the Forest of Dean,
does.
doesn't it? Yeah, it is. Yeah. And of course, all
Well,
of
the
us.
Forest of Dean sounds like a word for the
Yeah.
lady downstairs as well, if you think about it.
The Royal Forest of Dean. So we had this thing going on all the time where it was kind of like, it was our way.
Tell them about the tour in Australia with the airplane.
With the airplane.
Yeah, with the jumbo jet pilots.
I don't remember that one. What was that?
When you knocked their hat off.
Oh.
He doesn't remember stuff like this.
Oh,
This
that
is
was
what took-
awful. Oh, that was horrible. I remember that, yeah.
It's high jinx, though, wasn't it?
It was. No, it was.
So tell 'em
we
what
were
you
going
did.
to Brazil, and we got 5-star. We got.
Oh, it wasn't Australia, was it?
No,
Yeah.
we were on our way to Brazil, and
Yeah.
we got 4, first class travel, and we got so far, and then we had to do whatever you do when you get to an airport and get on a connecting flight. And when we were we didn't have to get off. We had to stay on the plane. And while we were stood in first class and they were letting everyone else off and changing crew,
Yeah.
Zach, our bass player, found the overhead locker was full of these pilot's hats. So he got one of them on and he starts marching around first class in it, and then he threw it across the plane, which was about 8 seats deep, mind. It was a big plane.
Yeah.
It happened to hit a girl who was a hostess who just walked onto the plane. And that was it. We were thrown off.
Oh, well, that's all right, yeah.
We were thrown off the plane
Yeah.
and put into some chicken class shithouse, flown into Brazil that way. But you know what? When we landed in Brazil, I mean, bearing in mind, the day before I left in the forest, right? Drove up through the forest, gave someone like that. And no one really cared where I was off to, you know. But then when I landed in Brazil, we landed on that tarmac in Brazil. And as soon as we landed, we could see the fans on the roof of the airport. Like, that's nuts, what's going on here. And the police came out onto the runway with a people carrier and 2 police cars, got us off the plane, put us in that minibus, and then escorted us out the back gate of the airport.
It's just nuts, isn't
And
it?
there was thousands of fans in the street, mind, all in Sao Paulo. And then by the time we got back to we got to the hotel, it was thousands in the street. Like, so when the wagon pulled up, they had 2 lines of policemen from where we parked to the door of the hotel, 40 guys in a chain for us to run the gauntlet up there. Jet lagged, all the rest of it. I remember running through the door, and the reception was just full of celebrity types and all that. And Seal was in there. You know that guy? Not Seal, the little, not the mammal thing. Seal, the singer. And then last time we'd seen him, he was just in a pair of jeans, dreads, trainers, doing the Adamski tour, singing on that tune Killer that he had.
Yeah.
Now he's a solo artist and he's walking around the reception of this hotel in a black Armani suit with no shoes on or a fucking t-shirt with an acoustic guitar and a string over his back.
The thing is that they've gone and just got some just regular British young men.
Yeah.
And dropped them into something that they can't. I mean, it's just.
it's just
you can't compute, can you?
No, you can't. We were out in the pool that afternoon, and we were down there like we just arrived in Greece. We'd all got our little shorts on in by the pool. We had a couple of lagers. Skid Row turned up, and they got leather trousers on with all the thing down the side, little leather waistcoats, big aviators. It was like 99% humidity. It was 120 degrees or something, and they've turned up in cowboy boots and leather trousers. You could hear them walk past just with all the wet in them, squidging as they walk past.
Tell them the pickled onion story, because now I've brought it up. They'll be.
You can't have that on there.
You've just mentioned the bit in the Forest of Dean, the Biffins Bridge.
Yeah, but you can't mention. Well, it was more the Kiwi, really. Our bass player had a really long todger, and he had these tricks he could do on the road that were entertaining. But he had this excessive amount of foreskin, should we say? Yeah. So, like when a 6-year-old runs through the lounge in his socks, sometimes
this isn't the story I've always been told.
The sock hangs off the end of the foot,
Yeah.
and it flaps about. And that's a bit like what he had.
Yeah.
So he could put fruit. He could put a kiwi fruit down it. That was his first triumph. I noticed a whole kiwi fruit went down inside his foreskin, and then it resembled like it had gone off. It was green in there, you know. But I did see him do 13 grapes and 13 grapes of cubes of cheese, and then shot them out like a Gatling gun. And then he went for the limit. His record was a Coke can. He actually put a Coke can down there and then folded the skin.
Didn't he used to have like a plate of pickled onions and then have a hole in the bottom and put his private member in with the onions and then offer
So
it?
this is the classic Spinal Tap moment, right? So after a gig, at that level, when you're really, really, really famous, right, they give you 10 to 15 minutes to get changed. And I'm literally just sweating continually after a gig, especially in America in the summer. And then they wheel in the meet and greet. We called it the grip and grin. And it would be record company people, you know, promoters, competition winners, dignitaries and all that kind of stuff. And we'd all sit in a line in the changing room, and then they'd come down, hiya. I'm Marty Falkner from the label. And it would be all this. And the bass player used to sit there with a paper plate on his lap, with an old cut in the middle, and he'd decorate the plate in sometimes like rice, salad, sometimes potato salad, and then he'd pull his balls up and stick them on the top, and then he'd have a plastic knife and fork, and he'd genuinely eat the rest of the meal, and every now and again he'd eat his balls with the fork and pretend to cut into him with a plastic knife and fork, and people would be chatting to him and he's got mayo around his mouth, and the blokes would lean in and go, "What have you got there? That's some nice looking meatballs you got there." And it was his actual testicles, and they never knew that he had his testicles on a plate.
Is that English food?
Yeah.
Is that from Englandshire?
What you boys got there? Is that from the Farsadine, is it? But this is our way of getting over the mundane.
Yeah, I know exactly,
It was the mundane. You know, Groundhog Day. You know, you'd arrive in a town, you know, if you're doing a bus tour, you know, you're sleeping in the bus and you're literally in that tiny little, you've been in one, they're like tiny little coffins, aren't they? And you go in for a shower and you'd have a couple of hours at the venue and you're hanging around, aren't you? Then you do a sound check and you're hanging around and, oh, here's the show, it's come in finally. And then
and
all
also
that energy,
you're 20 years old as well.
Yeah,
that's the
so
thing.
we'd finished
You're
the
20
gig.
years old.
We were 20.
Yeah, that's what every 20 years, any 20-year-old, when nobody's going to turn around and say, lads, this is absolutely out of order and tell you off. There's nobody to do that either because they're all going,
well, we're hiring them. We're their boss.
Yeah.
They can't say anything. So our crew used to go out in America when it really hit the big time. We'd have a meet and greet every night at these venues, like ice hockey arenas, basketball arenas we were playing, all that kind of thing. And the crew would go out before the support act, which we took Populita South out there. Who else did we take? Cart USM we took out there. Anyway, they would go out into the crowd and they would give out VIPs for the meet and greet. And the crew would have certain days. So they'd do a blonde night, they do a brunette night, they do a skinny night, a fat night, whatever. And we'd walk into the grip and grin room after where there's free drink and everything. The room would just be full of blondes or brunettes or whatever. And they used to wind us up, mind. If we'd had a bad day, they'd do some really nasty things to her. Disabled night and all sorts. I mean, it's just not funny. Or just fill it full of fellows. So we'd come in from the dressing room smelling nice, loads of air gel on everything. The room was just full of blokes.
and you've only got a certain amount of LGL.
There's only so much, you go in and come straight back out.
You've got Cindy Crawford turning up, you went half a pot then.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to use it sparingly. I didn't have my own runner. So, but these were the antics that went on, you know, and it was amazing experience.
So what happens when you do, because the thing is that nobody tells you, and I know loads of people have been in bands, loads of people have had hit records and all that. What nobody tells you is nobody is shot up into the air out the cannon and then stays up there.
No.
Nobody.
No.
And the higher up you go, the bigger it is to drop down the other side. Even Michael Jackson, all of them, George Michael, I mean, Prince.
Robbie Williams. Although he seems to go like that, doesn't he?
Yeah, I thought his film was brilliant with the monkey.
Yeah.
And the things we're talking about here, he really...
Yeah.
I loved it at the end when he said, well, I'm just an entertainer. And I thought, he's come to terms with who he is. And he is great at that.
Yeah.
He's, you know, so what's it like when...
But he looked down on it, didn't he? That's the funny thing. For a moment, he was looking down on himself for being it. Yeah, which was weird. I don't know why he did that. Coke, I expect.
So,
Drugs, kids. Don't do drugs.
The thing is that every person I've known that's done anything in the industry, they all talk about where it went wrong. But the thing is, it's going to go wrong, isn't it? It has to. You know, you might have one hit album or two hit albums, three albums.
Yeah.
You know, there's very few bands like U2, and they haven't released a decent album for 25 years.
No, they haven't. No, look at Coldplay.
Yeah.
I mean, I've not liked anything since they released Yellow. I mean, that first album I thought was amazing.
Everyone says that. Oh, I don't.
I don't. I mean, yeah, they found their recipe, didn't they?
Yeah.
He's in that kitchen. He's gone. Oh, that works. I'll just keep doing that now. And he just regurgitates this same tripe over and over again.
You think when you went in and done the second album, which was a lot heavier, that was like? I mean, you could argue that your fan base had grown up a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, there's some real good details in the book about this. But the first album was, like I said, written innocently, where there was no agenda, there was no one to satisfy, bar ourselves and our intrigue in, like, what happens if we combine these beats with house pianos and let's just do this, you know? Like I was into rock more, reggae and ska and things like this. Some of the guys were like, you know, Beatles fans. Some of them were more into just dance stuff. So there was such a mixture. I mean, Ian was a classically trained guitarist, mind. Ian's trained as a classically trained. And I'm not sure if his dad was absolutely up for him doing what he was doing, you know, because his dad was a classically trained guitarist as well. But Ian loved those early days of the Punks and Cream and stuff like that. You know, it was Yardbirds, you know, all that intrigued him. He was a little bit older than me. So I think that little musical mesh that happened at that given point in time, bearing in mind our brains hadn't fully functioned yet, mind.
Yeah.
We were 20.
That's it. This is what people don't realise.
We were number one in America and the bass player and keyboard player were 18. They couldn't even get a drink. Not that stopped them, mind you, but, you know, it was that sense. But what I think happened...
So what happens when you're at that age and it's like, obviously, at some point, it's diminishing returns, isn't it? You're putting singles out, they're not getting to the charts, rather than the labels start to get a bit like, well, you know, what are you going to do, lads? And then...
It was the elastic breaking, you know, off the back of Schubert Dip and us feeling so... We were really aggrieved by the pop tarnished thing that had happened with us. You know, we didn't want to be known as a pop band. We weren't. We were being accused of being, you know, manufactured, that we'd had a team of songwriters behind us, like your East 17s and your Take That's and New Kids on the Block and all that kind of thing. You know, and we really pushed back against that. It was insulting to hear it, you know. I remember actually in a press conference in Mexico, we'd only just arrived that afternoon. We had to go straight to a press conference, and we were in this massive civic hall. Bet 300 people present there, TV crews, radio. Room was absolutely rammed. We were up on this stage, you know, table dressed, bowl of fruit, 5 band members wheeled out in front of them. Within the second question, I think it was, we started getting accused of being New Kids on the Block. And I could feel the tension from the far end of the table where Derry and Zach were. And in the corner of my eye, I noticed Zach's hand go up on the table, into the fruit bowl, and then down under the table. And I was like, no, not now. We've just arrived in Mexico. Anyway, Zach got up, he had his cock out, and he had a kiwi fruit in the end, and he stuck his finger up to everyone like that and just went. And him and Derry walked straight out. And I just got up and left with them then. Because they were being insulting.
It's a strange protest, that is.
Yeah, they were insulting, you know. There were women in the front row fainting and giving it this, you know. But it was just like, how dare you? This boring narrative that was going on, you know. And so when we got in to write that second album, obviously you've got the pressure of, oh, the second album moment, you know, which then was a big deal. I don't know so much now, but it was a big deal. And I think all of us internally were like, we don't want anything to do with that past thing that we've just become. We need to be this, you know. And we toured heavy, and we toured heavy for 2.5 years with Schubert Dip. So we were really used to the whole, just give it large on stage thing. And I think that manufactured stigma, you know, stigma was us being, you know, and it was just an aggressive album. But I think it's a work of art. I really do. I still think today it stands there as a solid album, you know. It hasn't got the big hit like Unbelievable on it, but it's got enough on it. I think it's got more on it than what Schubert Dip had on it. But then money. You know, second album, royalties start coming in. Oh, I thought we would all be getting the same. Right, okay, so I get that much, and he's getting how much? Oh.
Well, this is all the standard. This is the
Then
standard, isn't
you've got
it?
you've got dynamics changing
Yeah.
then, because it's just the basics of living, isn't it? Like, oh, I can afford this, but he got how much did he get?
Can you explain how the royalty split works for just the normal people? In that, say, so if you've written a song, it's been played on the radio, that's generating cash. Obviously, people are buying it, that's generating cash. It's been synced up maybe for films and things like that, that's generating
There's so
cash.
many avenues, Andy.
So all that money, once you've got that pile of money, how much is the label taking of that as a percentage?
Well, depending on
usually?
your record deal cut, I think in our example, EMI were on about a 30% cut.
That's
we
really good.
Really good, yeah. We got a very good deal out of EMI.
But this is the profits, isn't it? They're still taking out their...
This is the mechanicals,
yeah.
right? So there's mechanical royalties, which I don't know so much now if they are in play so much, because mechanicals meant the physical sales, right? As in CDs, vinyls, cassettes. So nowadays, maybe what people buying, they're buying downloads, I suppose. That's mechanical.
But nobody's buying it. It's the ad revenue.
Yeah,
That's where you're earning is off ad revenue.
So you get two deals. You've got your record company deal, you've got your publishing deal. So the record company deal is usually a mechanical deal, and that was say if us three in this room have got a deal, it's split equally between the three of us. That's the record company deal, split equally, right? Then you've got your publishing deal. Well, say you and Rob are the main two songwriters, and I just chip in, right? So you'd probably say you two take 40% each, I take 20.
And the band's deciding that, aren't they, really?
Yeah, it happens in a publishing meeting. Yeah, and there's no fists, you've got no pistols or nothing in there. You should do, really, because it's daylight fucking robbery. And the rows, if you're not a strong character in that meeting, like I wasn't, you get walked over by people who are strong characters, and they take the mick. And
one of the big things that happens in the music industry is if you've got a song, then in terms of the royalty split, usually, it doesn't have to be like this, but the usual thing would be 50% of the music and 50% on the lyrics, isn't it? And that means someone could have written a song which just has got one sentence or one word, but if they've written that word, then they're getting 50% of it. And so this often happens that bands will do a couple of years, and then suddenly they're walking in all really happy that they've got like their performance royalties, 100 grand, and then they find out the singer's got $1 million or something. It's a big difference, isn't it?
Yeah, look at a song like Faithless Song, I Can't Get No Sleep. That's all he says. Can't get no sleep. That's pretty much it, But the band would have written that tune, But yeah, in the old days, it used to be melody and lyrics. So regardless of how strong the keyboard player is, or how amazing the bass player is, or how fantastic the drummer is, right? Interestingly, I bumped into Clive Stumberfield once, the drummer from James Brown's band. And I've never met, God rest him because he was gone now, but a so bitter, twisted person.
Because he should be a billionaire.
Oh, I mean, the man should have been loaded, really, but he was poor. He died a poor man. And that's a classic example of somebody up front songwriting not really paying credit to what was happening behind him. And, I've heard in recent times my old comrades in the band saying that, oh, we could have had anybody in the band. We could have had anyone doing this, right? And that's where I say, no, you wouldn't have had the same thing, My DNA, your DNA, it affects the mix, right? And I'm not saying the mix is in the EQs, the mix of what's going on, it's an energy thing, it's a dynamic.
But also, the other thing is, I suppose everyone's holding on to this because at some point you're going to be dropped by the label.
Yeah.
No one stays on the label for the whole of their lives.
No.
So when did that happen with EMF? And what motivated that?
I think the death of, obviously Schubert Dip was massive global success, sold millions of copies across the world. And then what happened, Andy, was in America, after Schubert Dip, EMI, which had 4 companies in America, really boring story, but there was 4 companies representing EMI in America. The people that owned EMI Global decided to have a merger. And the one company that was looking after Jesus Jones in America, when we were getting number 1 and they got to number 3, suddenly they became the chief executive of EMI in America, and they had to look after us. So we rock up like literally 6 months after doing 6,000 a night in America to start our Stigma tour, and we can't even sell out 300 people because they haven't worked it. They've just got the album and shelved it. They bombed it in the bottom of the cupboard, didn't want to work it, didn't want to out promote it or nothing.
Yeah.
And it hit us for six hand, you know, because riding that storm that was Schubert Dip and thinking, right, we'll do this album. How can we lose that many fans that quick? You know, how can it go from that to that, like in the space of 6 months? You know, and that's how quick the bubble can pop, you know. But I think more it was to do with the record company and the fact we had no backing, you know. So anyway, we did America and we come back home and we decided, right, we're not going to stay with EMI in America. We got to get into a legal battle now. And we employed the help of the guy who took on Sony, I think, for George Michael. And he got us, tried to get us out of that deal. And it pretty much ruined our career at that moment onwards, you know. We still had the backing of Rupert Perry and people in EMI in London, but it put an edge on us, you know, put like, ooh, this is tricky situation to be in, you know. The rest of the world,
George Michael didn't.
No.
Of Prince. Prince and George Michael. No one's bigger than the industry.
Bomb, you know.
No one's bigger than the industry.
The rest of the world was fine, you know. We were loving it in Asia and across Europe. We were having a ball. Stigma did really well. We did some amazing dates and festivals. And then when we come off the back of that, obviously the money had really started to take a toll. The excessiveness of the partying was starting to pay, you know, it was starting to get dark. It wasn't just fun anymore. It was getting super excessive. And then we got home and I remember us hitting the ground after Stigma and getting home and just going, you know, drawing a breath and going, I don't want to do this for a while. Very similar, like when I read Hammer of the Gods, you know, where they got into that thing of doing 6 months in America and then coming home and being normal for 6 months. And that tragic story of John Bonham, you know, when they went to get back into rehearsals to go back to America, and John didn't really want to go and do it again. He didn't want to do it. He got used to being back at home with the wife and the kids and all that, and he was loving life back at home when he on the farm. And, you know, in the pub, one day, 22 double vodkas I read somewhere, you know, and a couple of tablets out with the alcoholicness or whatever he was going on, you know, and it ruined him, you know. But he was battling with himself there, and I felt that same pull. Like, I come back after that 3-4 years in, I was just like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I didn't know if I enjoyed being away in that firing line all the time so much, you know. And I started to think, hang on, I climb that ladder. Because we do, don't we? We have these goals. We set ourselves these goals and these dreams. And am I living the dream now, you know? And we climb the ladder and we get right to the top. And then we go, I'm not sure if I like the view so much, you know. But we're doing the thing we love doing. Like, you and I know very much what it's like, whether you're sat behind a kit in a room here or whether you're sat on a stage behind your kit. You're always behind your kit, aren't you?
Yeah.
And I've wrestled on and off with that throughout my life since the EMF ended, you know, because when I was young, I had that passionate dream to get there. I got there and did it. And then anything after, like when I've been in funk bands like you mentioned earlier, you know, playing weddings or whatever gigs there are, it just doesn't seem to be any point, you know?
When I never had anything like you had, but, you know, I did play with Robert Plant, who's a big artist.
Yeah.
2 years of that, and then the year after that, when it stopped, and I had to go back to just normal life, and I couldn't take it. And I can remember I was blown up, and I'd blown up my dad, and I was getting angry and blowing up and not acting great at all.
Yeah.
And I can remember I blew up my dad, I went upstairs, and my dad turned around to my mum and said, the trouble with him is he's got to get his head round, he's done the biggest thing he's ever going to do in his life.
Wow.
And I was 30.
Wow.
And the thing is, my dad was right, but also he wasn't right, because this channel's probably bigger now than that. But the point is, you have to believe that there's this other thing. You have to believe that that's there, because that's what motivates you to go forward, isn't it? Is thinking. Yeah. And once you've thought, well, I've done it. What am I going to do now?
Yeah.
And everything then is just coloured.
Yeah, I remember that feeling. You know, when I got the call from the record company and one of the band to say that it was over, you know, and I remember just sitting in my little humble 3 up, 2 down, just kind of staring at a wall, just thinking, you know, what the
And the thing is, if you say book holiday, now you're flying with the bloody oi polloi.
Yeah.
You have to queue up.
Yeah.
Then you go to a hotel that you're paying for. It's not
Yeah.
as good as what you got.
Yeah, there's
and
no
then you're
PA.
and you're saying to everybody, bloody hell, I used to get
Yeah,
rooms that are like this,
yeah,
and we'd have that.
and there's
everyone's
no one doing it for you.
And everyone was with you, is just going, oh God, yeah, you used to be a big shot.
Yeah,
you know,
And it's not.
Yeah.
You know, and that decompression, that moment of change, you know, the record companies don't have a manual for that. They don't have a manual for when you get catapulted into fame, and equally they have no manual or support service mechanism to help people transfer back in.
Yeah.
It's a bit like, you know, what they say about criminals, isn't it? They have a middle place to go to when they come out of prison to acclimatise to everything. You need that with fame.
Yeah.
You know, because sure enough, yeah.
Like a folk band you could join, or something
Yeah.
that just does like pubs.
Creme brulee.
You're gonna have to do this for a year before
Yeah, yeah.
before you land out properly. Really?
Yeah.
Until you've got happy doing
work.
creme brulee.
It'll do you good. Just to bring you down. But I had no problem feeling grounded, right? Even though all the rock and roll lifestyle, I loved it. I did love being involved with the background of things. I love being involved with the crew and the production. I always used to get my hands dirty. But when I come out of it initially, I thought, what am I going to do? I can't go down to the Dole office, you know, sit in the queue next to the ex-Olympian tobogganist, you know, looking for a job. You know, there's no boy band looking for another drummer, or, you know, they're just not around, you know. I signed on once, you know. But the funny thing is that, like, if I had that call on a Wednesday and I was out for a drink on a Saturday night, everyone else around me locally still thought I was a superstar, right? And that carried on for years. Even though I got a job in an ice cream factory, and I'm stood there in overalls and a hairnet watching crunches and galippos fly past, which was lush, by the way. But it was really good money as well. You know, I had the job to fall back on. I was a trained plumber before, right? But I just didn't want to go back down there. It felt like I'd gone too far back, you know? And there was something stopping me from doing that. So I thought, what can I do? What can I do? And I remember I went traveling for a little while to discover myself. What I should have realized was I left myself in the airport in England. I didn't need to go around the fucking world to find myself. I was there, right? I needed a break. And I got back and I went and worked in a music shop selling equipment with a really cool mate of mine. I ran the drum store upstairs, met loads of young kids coming in every day, you know, and they'd be like, oh, what are you doing in here, you know? So I was able to feed some of that, you know. There was a little bit of adulation from the people that came in and out because they were big fans of what I did, which was kind of nice. It was a gentle way, because adulation is like heroin, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Every night you're thousands of people screaming your name and wanting to suck parts of your body and all the rest of it. Next thing you know, there's no one there. You know, you go from the extreme end of that to extreme loneliness. It's like, it's a clock.
Now, of course, your bass player, Zach, him with the big
classic
foreskin,
John Bonham situation.
He died, when was that, 2002?
2002, yeah. Classic John Bonham situation, though. You
So
know, where
do you think he couldn't deal with this?
No, he couldn't.
And so he just wanted to keep it going and keep it going.
Yeah, because things started becoming unhinged with him near the end of when things were starting to pale off anyway. I was responsible for picking him up. I was the only one really with the straight head enough to go and pick him up, driving, you know, when we were going places, airport and stuff. And every time I go and pick him up, Andy, he would be, you know, I wouldn't be able to get in the house, couldn't get hold of him. And, you know, we got like a 3-week tour in Europe. I remember I was trying to get into his house. He had a beautiful old school chapel place. And I was around the house, banging on the windows. I couldn't get him to answer the door or anything, you know. And then eventually I saw through a crack of the window, he was unconscious on the floor in his lounge, on a pile of CDs, naked. Anyway, when I finally got him to answer the door, he'd forgotten he was even going on tour. He had no bag packed or anything. And I got to the point where I was an hour earlier because of him and him mucking me about. I just got in a car and drove off, and I told the management, you're going to have to send someone to get him. He's in a mess. And then there was a situation where we were playing Phoenix Festival. We were on at like 6:30. There was at least 50, 60,000 people waiting to watch us. I think Paradise Lost were on after us. And Zach hadn't turned up. And we were like 15 minutes before the show was about to start for us. And we're in the dressing room like, where is he? Like, you know, we can't get hold of him. We don't know where he is. And our keyboard player was saying, look, I'll play bass. I can play the bass on this. I'll be fine. And he could. And then another mate was like, oh, I'll have a go at Derry's thing, you know, with the keyboard. And it's like, you can't learn what Derry does in 10 minutes. And then you're just getting stressed. It was in my head and I was just like, I could kill him. You know, why is he doing this to us, you know? And then all of a sudden the door opened and he comes swinging through the door at like 5 minutes to stage time. Oh, sorry lads, I left my passes, I lost my passes, I couldn't get in and this, that and the other. And it's like, get your clothes on, get going, we got to go. And that was probably the most aggressive show. I remember I walked out on stage and, oh, nightmare. You know, when you dream of things going wrong, really did, you know. So a festival, you know, not even a line check. The crew did the line check. And everyone's in a bad mood, you know. And I'm on a riser at the back next to our keyboard player who's got a keyboard like literally bolted to this stand and he would throw it in the air. He's just hitting samples. Throw it around, you know, just very dramatic. And he went extra balls up and he managed to catch 3 or 4 leads that were coming across the back of his stage, including my click, and rip it all out. So the set's about to start. All of a sudden I can hear backing tracks coming out of the side wings, not even out of my wedge. Yeah. And I'm having to try and figure out where I am, you know. Drum techs, I'm screaming at the drum tech. I mean, literally taking his skin off, you know. Anyway, I think it took the whole first song was ruined, you know, and it wasn't until afterwards I bumped into my family out front and my mum was there, you know, oh, I love it. Great show, great show. What happened at the beginning, she went? I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, look. And I turn around, she goes, see those big screens? I went, yeah. She goes, you were on them for the first couple of minutes, just you. And you were screaming it, buddy, what was going on? I was, oh my God, I was so embarrassed. It was totally out of sync. Everything was out of sync, you know. I couldn't do nothing about it. When you can't actually hear this stuff going on, Andy, as even a competent player like myself, I couldn't fix that. Yeah. So that was the start of the downfall. And his touring habits had started to take hold at home. And there's some really challenging parts about this in the book, which took me 4 years to write this book. And this particular section took me a long time to write, to come to terms with. Because like over the years now, like being in my 50s, you know, and I've been through quite a lot in my life. A lot of times I've fallen into the ground and had to get myself back up and been through various situations, quite traumatic situations, and dealt with some therapy and what have you. So from a psychological point of view, I know I'm really well tooled up now. And if I was in that moment with him again now, I'd have saved his life. Without a doubt, I could have saved him. And that's really sad to think, you know, when you lose somebody that had, you know, he was the center of that bulb, you know, he was literally the spark in the sun. He was mental in that Keith Moon kind of way, unhinged, but in a beautiful, eccentric, harmless, fun-loving way, you know, where he lived every second at its purest. Even though he'd get bollocks, he'd get off his head and drunk, whatever. No one was ever in danger with him, ever. Not even verbally, you know. He had that joy about him, you know. And I remember when we lost him, it was almost like, you know, some damn horrible cloud came over the whole band and we kind of just went off into the distance, you know. And everyone was living in different parts of the country. One was down the coast, Devon. One was up north in the Lake District and the other was in London. I'm in the West Country, you know. We kind of went to the furthest regions, you know. No one even spoke. We didn't speak about it. You know, and from that tragedy, you know, we did end up getting back together, and I remember at the time thinking, oh, this is really healthy, you know, being back together and having some fun, playing the old songs, and I thought, oh, this will be fun now. I was working with Tama, working with lovely people like yourself and all these other wonderful Simon Phillips and Portnoy and whoever else we were working with. And I was loving that. I was being taken seriously at a job I absolutely adored. You know, doing marketing and artist relations and research and development, all of it. I absolutely adored all of that. But then I got the chance to go out and do some gigs. And just act the twat for a weekend. Like, you know, I got an hour of being a pop star, but now I can go back and be my and that was the most comfortable I felt doing what I did. Yeah. Better than how it was when it was relevant. Now it was irrelevant, except for the fact we get paid well to do a nostalgia show, you know. And I thought, oh, this is okay, even though Zach's not with us, but it wasn't real. You know, when we were together as a 5-piece, that was when it was relevant. We were trying to do something special. We were trying to change the world with our music. We were trying to make people feel. But when you're older and you're in a band that just does nostalgia and you're not the original lineup, it just feels irrelevant. There's no point to it. But the way it's summed up in my book is pretty beautiful, that is.
So what motivated you to write the book, and has that been a help to you? Have you been able to really understand? Because a lot of people, I'm the same, and most people who in the music industry get to a certain age, you're continually going over why it didn't work rather than, and this is the message I've got, that I've come to the conclusion, no, you did amazing things. It was an amazing life.
Yeah.
And most of it was joyful and happy, like you say, and everyone was having a laugh, and it was silliness and all this, you know.
Yeah, and I don't look back on it now, Andy, and think, oh, anything was particularly that bad, you know. It was all lessons, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lessons in life, you know. And I had this feeling that I wanted to write the book. Obviously, there's a lot of funny things to talk about, like you and I have spoke today. But there's the overall view of it. Of I came from a rather simple upbringing, you know, in a part of the world that, let's just say, was a few beats behind the bar, right? And you know, we look at like, what do you need in life to get to there? Where do you need to? Sometimes people say, you know, oh, it's where you were born, or, you know, you got a silver, you know, spoon in your mouth and all that kind of bullshit, you know. And I wanted to tell my story as honestly as possible, you know, that I came from really, really standard working class, lower working class, actually. We weren't rich or anything. We were rich in family and the normal things of being able to go out in the woods and play stick war and get out on the BMX and do all that kind of scruffy stuff, be feral.
But your dad was a really creative person.
My dad,
wasn't he?
he was. He was my stepfather was an animator.
Yeah, your stepfather,
Yeah. Because, you know, again, that's...
And say some of the stuff he animated, because it's bloody ridiculous.
Oh, it's amazing, yeah. I mean, he was doing Watership Down, he did the BFG, he did a bit of Winnie Pooh, Fangface, Super Ted, Danger Mouse, you know, and that was really cool. You know, that was really cool. Wasn't a musician at all, mate.
No, it's a creative thing, isn't it? There's a creative things that travel through, and they are there in the working classes, and it's not just straight. Well, you know,
doesn't need to be. You can be any class.
Yeah,
you know,
that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah,
he used to teach. You know, I was big on art, and I love art, and always creating something with my hands.
Now, did he die just before the
band?
Yeah,
he died 41 years old, yeah. So I lost my real dad, my biological father, disappeared when I was 6. Well, my mum kicked him into touch, right? Because he was a violent thug. So I grew up in that atmosphere. And then my stepfather came along, Belgium animator, hence my beautiful surname now. And then, my stepfather unfortunately just tragically died at 41 from a hemorrhage and a stroke.
So you're going into all this bloody, as you're fired out the cannon.
Yeah.
You've also, your dad's
Dad had died just before EMF kicked off. He didn't actually see EMF at all. He didn't get to see it. But all the way through that 15, 16, 17, you know, when I used to sit in his room, and his room was just full of paper where he was doing animation, you know, for whoever. And he bought me a book on how to get there, you know, how to become famous and all that kind of thing, you know, one of them classic old manuals from the 80s. And he just said, just don't give up. You know, don't ever give up on what you visualize, right? So I'm a firm believer that you have to visualize, right? Whether you visualize this interview last night, right? You visualize what you want out of whatever that situation, right? And the universe should bring it to you if it materializes.
I agree.
I'm a firm believer on that, you know. And I from the age of 11, no, what was I? I was 14, I think I was. So I'd already been in bands. My mum took me to go and watch Genesis play on the Mama tour. I hadn't seen a big live gig before. I'd been playing some Genesis at home, right, next to the record player and all that, working it all out. And anyway, I'm at this gig back at the NEC, right? That lovely little place, the NEC. It used to be the NEC. And we're right at the back. There's no screens. There's just this huge stage, you know. And then all of a sudden, the lights come on. The sound starts. Chester starts playing. Chester and Phil, you know, right in the neck, like that. Bang, a snare, everything. epiphany. I'm doing that. That's what I am going to do. I knew straight away because I could do it at home, right? So it was just that little moment of like realization that what is the link between me sat at the back of this stadium at this age compared to that, right? And there is an interesting section in the book actually, because I was 6 or 7 years old when my nan and gramps bought me one of those classic little plastic drum kits. I think you see there's a clip on the YouTube where Mike Pointner plays one.
Yeah, I know this.
You know the one, don't you? And they bought me one of those, right? Now, I smashed that about for however long, at 6 or 7 years old. But I tie that in nicely in the book where, how is it that was in my life at 6, 7 years old, then at 20 years old, I'm walking onto a stage in Brazil in front of 60,000 people. The journey between that little tiny kit at 6, 7 years old, and then I only had it for a little while, and then it disappeared. But then it came back, and I ended up in a stadium in Brazil, right? And that was to do with that gig where I was at Genesis, and I went, poof, I want to do that, you know. And I think this is important, you know. We say like we got to be there to open doors, you know. We got to be there. We have to turn up. We have to make effort, right? We can't just sit at home and hope the door is going to open, the phone's going to ring. It's not. You have to create your own luck. And you create your luck by stepping out of the comfort zone, right? Visualizing where you're going to go and visualizing what you want out of it. So 4 years ago, I decided I'm going to write a book, right? And at the same time, I'd started dating because I got divorced. So I started dating, and I'm just turned 50. And I'm literally driving a dating bus down the road, and I'm just car crashing into everything with it. My dating life was just a horrendous car crash. Awful situations were just coming out. It was just the strangest comedy, really, in the world, tragic comedy. So off the back of that, I wrote a story, which then turned into a TV series, right? So now I've got 3 TV series, 7 shows each, huge story arcs, beautiful script. Really funny narrative about 4 middle-aged different men who somehow have not ended up in love and in the right place or whatever. They come from slightly different walks of life. I was doing that at the same time as the book, right? I've now got into the point now where I've got producers reading this series. Matthew Warren from Gavin and Stacey has read it and said he thinks it's wonderful. He would hire me tomorrow. So now I've got my head going, right, okay, where do I keep thinking forward now? So already now I'm thinking of what it looks like to be sat in the Emmys and you see those stairs and then the podium. So I'll visualise going up those steps to go and pick up the new British Comedy Award, you know. And the more you can actually think about these moments, I am a real firm believer. It's not, you know, your grandparents, oh, you can't dream, you know, dreams won't put food on the table, you know, and that kind of thing. No, you can go and get a job down Screwfix, right? That'll do it. That'll keep the wolves off the door and all that. But at the same time, it doesn't mean you can't stop dreaming. Dreaming will keep the spark, you know, and that's why, you know, I've kind of like pushed the music thing now back to the background and just thought, no, it's time for me to chase another, like I did when I was young, you know. There's the goal, there's where I want to go with that.
So Mark, if you want to help Mark chasing his dream, an older man still thinks that it's still life of the old dog, yeah, he's still got that horse isn't quite dead and you're going to flog it a little bit more, then link down below, go and buy his book. I tell you, it's an incredible story.
You'll love it.
And if you enjoyed this, you will enjoy the book. Mark, it's lovely to see you, mate. You're going to come back and talk about something else.
Anytime, yeah. We should talk about all
now you know where I am, you know. And
Thank you, Andy.
I'll bring
Thank
the
you,
paper.
Rob.
I'll bring the paper plates next time with the holes in. And I'm going to dedicate this to your dad and to Zach. How about that? We'll put that at the end.
Thank you.
Okay, mate. It's lovely to see you.